18 months had passed since the final piece separated from the sun. People still called it the solar fragmentation, although the name made the event sound cleaner than it had been. The sun had not shattered in one dramatic explosion. It had suffered repeated internal ruptures for more than a century. The first rupture removed a burning mass larger than several planets combined. Scientists claimed the fragment would eventually fall back into the sun. It never returned. More fragments separated during the following decades. Each one weakened the light reaching Earth. Winters expanded across continents. Growing seasons shortened. Governments began building underground settlements while publicly promising the damage could be reversed. The final central mass split 18 months before our mission. After that, reliable daylight ended. The surviving fragments moved across the black sky as dim red embers. They still released radiation and charged particles, but none produced enough steady warmth to support the planet. The oceans began freezing from the surface downward. Lakes became solid. Rivers turned into pale roads through dead cities. Trees remained standing long after their roots froze because the cold prevented normal decay. The atmosphere remained breathable, but breathing it directly could damage the lungs. Every exposed surface became cold enough to kill skin within minutes. Traditional agriculture disappeared first. The governments followed afterward. Hearth Nine existed beneath what had once been northern Arizona, inside an abandoned copper mine connected to deep geothermal wells. Heated water rose through reinforced pipes and powered turbines, agricultural lights, ventilation fans, water processing equipment and residential heating. Nearly 6,000 people lived there. The settlement had been designed for 12,000. Nobody considered that reassuring. The core levels held the geothermal station, council offices, medical chambers and the warmest residential areas. Engineers, administrators and senior security personnel lived closest to the machinery. The garden levels contained algae tanks, mushroom beds, insect farms, yeast vats and narrow trays of vegetables grown beneath artificial lights. The colder residential tunnels extended outward from the center. The farther someone lived from the geothermal system, the fewer heating hours they received. Hearth Nine no longer used ordinary money. Every citizen earned thermal credits. Those credits purchased room temperature, heated water, additional food, private lighting, and permission to use electrical equipment. People who could not work received basic allowances, although those allowances had decreased during the previous winter cycle. The council called the reductions necessary conservation. The residents of the cold levels called them scheduled freezing. My name was Mara Vale and I mapped surface routes. Before the final rupture, I transported medical supplies between emergency settlements. After the highways disappeared beneath snow and collapsed ice, I began guiding recovery teams through abandoned cities. I shared a converted maintenance office with Nadia Reyes and Elias Mercer. That arrangement would have required explanations in the old world. Hearth Nine had removed the need for many explanations. Elias and I had been together before the final fragmentation. During the first week of permanent darkness, our evacuation convoy separated when a tunnel collapsed outside Flagstaff. He believed I had died. Nadia found him several days later with frostbite, a damaged mask and a broken ankle. He kept him alive during the journey to Hearth Nine. They became close while I was missing. 3 months later I arrived with a salvage convoy. Nobody handled the reunion well. Eventually we stopped discussing ownership and began discussing heat. Our room contained 3 bunks, 1 metal table, a shelf of damaged books, and a heater that clicked continuously. Elias insisted the clicking remained harmless, although it had grown louder during the previous month. I woke during the artificial morning cycle when the ceiling lamps brightened from dark red to pale white. Recordings of birds played through speakers along the residential corridor. The birds sounded distorted after years of repeated use. Nadia sat beside the heater and tied back her hair. Elias slept on the lower bunk with one arm hanging toward the floor. After listening to him breathe, Nadia said his oxygen consumption sounded increasingly expensive. I suggested reducing his allowance. Without opening his eyes, Elias informed us that he had heard the entire discussion. Nadia told him that his interruption had damaged our research conditions. Elias finally sat upright and said we should appreciate his continued survival. I told him we appreciated his mechanical usefulness. He described that as a carefully restricted compliment. Nadia handed him a cup of mushroom broth and said his personality remained under evaluation. The broth tasted identical every morning, but Nadia still assigned each batch a different name. That morning she called it Forest Harvest Stew. No living forest remained within hundreds of miles. Elias tasted the soup and called the recipe remarkably complex. Nadia laughed and said he would praise anything made from mud and rocks. Our jokes were rarely intelligent. They only needed to feel familiar. Familiarity had become another type of warmth. We left our room and entered the central residential tunnel. Condensation covered the pipes overhead. Workers moved toward the core levels while children walked toward the education chambers. Most children younger than 6 had never seen sunlight. They drew yellow suns on the tunnel walls because teachers showed them photographs. Their skies were always too blue, and their shadows always pointed in the wrong direction. Near the dining hall, 2 reclamation workers carried a sealed container toward the processing level. A white identification tag hung from one handle. Someone had died during the sleep cycle. Hearth Nine did not bury bodies. The settlement processed every useful material. Bones became industrial minerals. Fat entered chemical production. Tissue became fertilizer. Officially, human remains never entered the protein system. Official statements had become another form of entertainment. Elias watched the container pass and remarked that refrigeration remained completely unlimited. Nadia told him the observation was aggressively unnecessary. He claimed he was only discussing preservation methods. I told him his explanation had arrived too late. We continued toward the garden levels. Nadia maintained algae cultures, fungal growth systems, nutrient balances, and biological filtration. Elias worked below her in the geothermal station, repairing pumps, valves, and thermal exchangers. I spent most work cycles studying maps and damage reports. Before we separated, Nadia pulled me beside one of the algae tanks and examined the seam along my thermal coat. She said the repair had started separating. I reminded her that I had reinforced it the previous day. Nadia looked at the adhesive covering the seam and called my method optimism rather than repair. She removed a needle and fixed it properly. Her face remained close to mine while she worked. When she noticed me watching her, she said I had started staring strangely again. I pointed out that she was standing extremely close. Nadia said the position was necessary for sewing. You could enjoy this less, I said. I could enjoy almost everything less, Nadia replied. He tightened the thread. Nadia understood the tension between us better than Elias understood either of us. Without looking up, she said I still believed she had stolen something from me. I told her she had stolen several things. Nadia joked that she had eventually returned my gloves. I said the gloves were not important. Her expression changed. I know what you meant, Nadia said. The pumps vibrated beneath our feet. Every silence in Hearth Nine contained machinery. True silence only happened when something failed. I reminded Nadia that she had kept Elias alive. She admitted that knowing this did not make our situation easier. It makes hatred inefficient, I said. Nadia gave a tired smile. Hatred wastes valuable calories. A warning siren sounded before either of us continued. The garden level lights changed from white to amber. The floor moved beneath our boots. Glass pipes cracked across the chamber. Green algae solution spilled across the concrete. Workers grabbed railings while a grinding noise traveled through the walls. The tremor lasted less than 30 seconds. A deeper alarm began from the core levels. That sound frightened everyone. Nadia looked toward the emergency stairs and said the alarm was coming from circulation. We ran downward. Workers moved through the stairwell carrying breathing masks, medical kits, and emergency tools. A loudspeaker activated above us. All residents in sections 5 through 9 must prepare for immediate relocation. Garden levels 2 and 3 require complete evacuation. Elias appeared through the crowd wearing insulated gloves and a protective helmet. His face removed the humor from both of us. The primary circulation housing ruptured, Elias said. The backup system has already activated. Nadia asked how long it could operate. 11 days under emergency rationing, Elias answered. I asked what emergency rationing meant. He looked toward the upper tunnels. The cold levels lose heating first. A second announcement sounded overhead. Residential sections 8 and 9 will lose thermal allocation within 2 hours. People around us stopped moving. Section 9 contained hundreds of elderly residents. The council had made its decision before completing the damage assessment. Nadia asked whether the primary housing could be repaired. Elias explained that the fracture ran through the entire assembly. When she asked where another could be found, he removed his helmet. Helios Station still has one, Elias said. Helios Station stood 60 miles north. It had been built decades before the final rupture as part of the original solar energy program. Nobody had reached it during the previous 7 months. Nadia said the council would need to send a recovery team. Elias told her they had already selected one. I understood immediately. They need my route knowledge, I said. Elias explained that they also needed someone qualified to remove the assembly. Nadia folded her arms and added that its biological channels would require sterilization. The filters have remained dormant for 18 months, Nadia said. She looked toward me. That requires all 3 of us. The damaged circulation system had also released geothermal chemicals into the lower tunnels. Our residential section and Nadia's work area would become uninhabitable within hours. Nobody could remain behind. During the mission briefing, the council presented the numbers. The backup pump had approximately 11 days of operational life under current demand. If the cold levels lost heat immediately, the backup could last 13 days. The council had already approved that reduction. Nearly 800 people would receive only 4 heating hours per cycle. The replacement assembly at Helios Station weighed 400 pounds. Its biological channels required sterilization before installation. The journey should have taken 3 days. The phrase should have become a warning. The crawler assigned to us waited near the surface gate. Its name was Martha. Martha had unreliable navigation, weakened rear heating, and a cargo door that occasionally opened without authorization. Elias examined the engine while Nadia loaded medical equipment. I asked why the vehicle had a grandmother's name. Elias said it was because she complained constantly and refused to die. Nadia told him the description sounded dangerously personal. Elias closed the engine housing and said he already regretted bringing both of us. I reminded him that he had regretted us before departure. That demonstrates effective planning, Elias replied. The surface gate opened. Blackness waited beyond it. Wind pushed dry snow through the entrance tunnel. The temperature outside measured more than 70 degrees below freezing. We entered Martha. The gate closed behind us. The outer doors opened toward the frozen world. The sky looked larger without daylight. Stars covered every clear section above us. The moon remained somewhere beyond the clouds, but without direct sunlight it had become almost invisible. Several fragments of the old sun glowed faintly along the horizon. They looked like distant red wounds. None produced measurable warmth. Martha's headlights illuminated the road. Abandoned vehicles remained frozen along both sides. Some contained bodies. Others had been stripped until only metal frames remained. We passed through an industrial town where the buildings still stood. Cities did not vanish after people died. They remained full of rooms that no longer served any purpose. Frozen curtains hung behind shattered windows. Ice pushed through brick walls. Furniture had been burned during the first winter. Copper wire, insulation, fuel tanks, and wooden doors disappeared afterward. Martha moved slowly because vibration could fracture the heating lines. Nadia watched the temperature display and called the frozen town affordable beachfront property. I told her the swimming conditions looked disappointing. Elias said he had never trusted water capable of swallowing buildings. I reminded him that he did not trust ordinary bathtubs either. He claimed bathtubs encouraged careless behavior. Nadia said his childhood sounded increasingly suspicious. The first mechanical failure occurred before we reached the elevated highway. Martha began vibrating. The rear heater stopped. Nadia studied the control panel and announced that the heater appeared emotionally exhausted. Elias guided the crawler into an abandoned service garage and asked us to stop insulting essential machinery. Nadia told him his machinery should improve. While Elias repaired the heating line, I checked the road outside. Several bodies remained near the old fuel pumps. Earlier scavengers had removed their coats and boots. Nadia joined me. They probably waited here, she said. Most people waited somewhere. She asked whether my convoy had stopped waiting. I told her my convoy had stopped existing. Nadia touched my shoulder and asked nothing else. From inside Martha, Elias called for someone with smaller hands. Nadia suggested mine, but I declared them professionally unavailable. 20 minutes later, the rear heater restarted. We continued north. 3 hours afterward, the ground trembled. The elevated highway shifted beneath us. Cracks raced through the concrete supports. Elias accelerated. The roadway collapsed behind Martha. Entire sections fell into the frozen canal below. Powdered concrete and snow filled the darkness. The collapse continued for nearly half a mile. Our return route disappeared. Elias stopped the crawler. "We cannot return through that corridor," I said. He told me my assessment was painfully accurate. Nadia asked for another route. I told them about an old coastal service road. When Elias learned it crossed ocean ice, he asked whether I had traveled it before. I admitted that I had only studied the maps. "That answer creates unnecessary concern," Elias said. "Everything outside creates necessary concern." The alternate route added nearly 40 miles. Our energy reserves could support the distance only if we recovered battery cells at Helios Station. We continued because turning around was impossible. 6 hours later, one solar fragment brightened behind the clouds. A red aurora spread across the upper atmosphere. The electromagnetic surge destroyed our long-range radio and corrupted much of the navigation archive. Elias struck the radio housing. Nadia told him the technique lacked scientific credibility. He said the radio required emotional correction. She replied that the radio appeared emotionally deceased. We followed old physical markers after that. Near an abandoned substation, we found another crawler resting sideways against a barrier. 3 frozen people remained inside. Their batteries, food, and weapons were gone, but their clothing remained untouched. Someone had taken only what they needed. That suggested disciplined scavengers rather than desperate refugees. Disciplined scavengers were usually more dangerous. The mission entered its second work cycle without morning. Time became difficult to feel outside. Clocks divided the darkness into artificial shifts, but the sky never changed. During my rest period, I woke beside Nadia while Elias drove. She watched the headlights move across the road and asked whether I ever considered our arrangement ridiculous. "Every hour containing measurable numbers," I said. Nadia asked whether I would have shared him before the world ended. I told her I had barely shared bathrooms before. She looked toward Elias and said she probably would not have dated him under normal conditions. I reminded her that he had owned 3 superhero shirts. Nadia said that confirmed everything. Without turning around, Elias informed us that he could hear every word. I reminded him that his hearing had never stopped us. He defended himself by pointing out that he provided transportation and warmth. Nadia added that he also provided unnecessary commentary. The exchange sounded normal. Normality became valuable because it never lasted. We reached the industrial canal during the following cycle. The bridge had collapsed years earlier. The canal itself was frozen. Near the edges, the ice measured several feet thick. The center remained dangerous because moving water and underground heat slowed the freezing. I stepped outside first and attached my harness to Martha. My heated boots tested each section. Elias drove behind me while Nadia watched the ground scanner. We reached the center. A sharp sound moved beneath the ice. The surface dropped. A crack opened below my feet. I fell through. The harness caught my waist. My legs struck the frozen wall beneath the surface. Black water moved several feet below. Nadia opened the side door and climbed out before Elias could stop her. She reached the edge and grabbed my harness. A second crack formed beneath her right foot. The ice collapsed. A broken metal support entered below her knee and tore through the outside of her leg. Her scream crossed the wind. Elias secured both lines and dragged us toward Martha. Blood froze against Nadia's trousers before we reached the cabin. The mission had failed from its beginning. The injury only made that failure visible. Elias cut away Nadia's thermal clothing inside the crawler. The metal had missed the major artery, but it had torn deeply through the muscle and damaged several smaller vessels. Nadia remained awake while Elias cleaned the wound. Her hands shook against the seat, but she still directed him through the treatment. She told him to irrigate the entire channel. Elias said he understood basic wound care. Nadia replied that he understood machinery and aggression. He told her she could insult him after the bleeding stopped. She said she intended to multitask efficiently. I held her shoulders while Elias worked. Nadia told me to stop crushing her coat. I told her to stop moving. Elias tightened the dressing and said we could both despise him after the bleeding stopped. I reminded him that we had never postponed it. Nadia told us to keep arguing while we secured the splint. We gave her antibiotics and pain medication. Neither could restore circulation. The injury should have ended the mission. Returning remained impossible because the highway had collapsed. Remaining beside the canal meant freezing when Martha's energy reserves failed. Helios Station stood 19 miles ahead. We continued. Nadia lay in the rear compartment with her leg elevated. I monitored the wound while Elias drove. His voice hardened whenever I suggested stopping. Gentleness could not shorten the distance. Elias said the crawler required continuous movement. I told him Nadia required immediate surgery. He answered that she required a heated facility first, and no surgeon existed between us and Helios. Nadia opened her eyes and told us we were discussing her survival too loudly. Her toes became pale during the final miles. Helios Station appeared beyond frozen transmission towers. The facility was built partially underground. Snow reached the second-floor windows. We restored emergency power through Martha's battery system. The station remained far below freezing, but it blocked the wind. Elias placed Nadia on a maintenance sled and pulled her through the corridors. Old posters covered the walls. One showed several glowing solar masses separating from the sun. The date printed beneath it came 9 years before the first publicly acknowledged rupture. I stopped walking. This project operated before the fragmentation, I said. Elias told me we had not come for history. I said we had been told the machines studied natural instability. Nadia raised herself on the sled. They created the instability, she said. Elias stopped. Nadia admitted that her mother had worked in biological containment at Helios. She explained that the extraction system introduced exotic gravitational material into the solar plasma, creating localized pressure zones. Multiple gravitational centers formed inside the sun. It began pulling against itself. Elias gripped the sled handle. We can discuss human arrogance after Hearth 9 survives, he said. The replacement circulation assembly waited in the lower equipment chamber. It weighed nearly 400 pounds. Hydraulic rails could move it toward the loading dock, but Elias had to restore the control system manually. Nadia directed the sterilization from the sled. The biological filters contained frozen fungal growth, chemical residue, and dead bacteria. We flushed the channels with alcohol, heated water, and ultraviolet light. The work required 14 hours. Nadia's fever increased. Her injured foot became darker. She understood the problem before either of us spoke. The lower tissue has become necrotic, Nadia said. Elias insisted the antibiotics needed more time. She reminded him that antibiotics could not restore blood flow. He said they would amputate inside Hearth 9. Nadia answered that Hearth 9 remained 68 miles away. I sat beside her and said we had recovered additional batteries. She pointed toward Martha's diagnostic panel. The crawler had already calculated the return range. With the replacement assembly, 3 healthy passengers, full cabin heating, and current weather resistance, the estimated range measured 71 miles. Hearth 9 stood 68 miles away. The calculation assumed no mechanical failure. Nadia's damaged circulation required the rear medical heater to operate at maximum output. Her body temperature had already fallen below normal despite the fever. With that heater active, Martha's estimated range fell to 58 miles. We needed 10 additional miles. Reducing cabin temperature would injure my lungs and increase Nadia's risk of cardiac failure. Removing medical supplies gained less than 1 mile. Removing food gained even less. Leaving the pump meant Hearth 9 lost heat within days. Carrying Nadia outside the heated cabin would kill her before we traveled 2 miles. The numbers occupied the screen. Nobody could argue with them honestly. Elias argued anyway. He suggested stopping to recharge from abandoned systems, repairing another vehicle, or moving the pump separately. I reminded him that no operational station or functioning vehicle had appeared along the route. Nadia added that the storm would reach us in 16 hours. Elias said we would find another method. Nadia told him the diagnostic system had already found every method. He said the system did not understand us. She answered that it understood distance. Elias stepped away from the screen. His anger had become fear. Nadia touched his sleeve. You cannot threaten arithmetic, she said. I can threaten almost anything. That confidence explains our relationship. She looked toward me and joked that in the old world she probably would not have settled for him. Elias said the remark felt poorly timed. Nadia reminded him that he had owned 3 superhero shirts. He called them cultural history. She called them personal failures. I almost laughed. The sound remained trapped in my throat. Nadia removed her portable battery pack and placed it in my hands. You will carry this pack, she said. I told her she still needed it. Nadia answered that she needed surgery and several miracles. I said we were not leaving her. She told me we could not take her without killing everyone. Elias looked toward the assembly. The settlement needs the pump, he said. Nadia reminded us that the settlement contained 6,000 people. I added that some of them were already freezing. The cold levels had lost heat before we departed. Nadia had understood the moral decision before we did. The council had already sacrificed people to preserve the rest. Now the same calculation had reached us. We found an emergency maintenance shelter 2 miles from the station. It contained a geothermal heat line and 1 sealed room. The system could keep Nadia alive for several days. The approaching storm would prevent any immediate rescue. We moved her there. Elias repaired the heater. Nadia made us remove almost all remaining food because carrying it reduced Martha's range. He kept water, medication, and 2 ration bars. Before we left, she handed me an old photograph. Elias stood beneath sunlight beside a pickup truck. His hair was longer and his smile looked careless. Nadia said she had carried the photograph for 18 months. I told her she should keep it. You will keep him longer, she said. I told her the sentence sounded cruel. Nadia said she had intended it kindly. Elias sat beside her and told her to stop speaking as though we were leaving forever. She told him to continue being unpleasant. He promised he could accomplish that easily. Nadia asked him to keep me moving. Elias promised to bring help back. She told him to avoid lying poorly. He pressed his forehead against hers. Neither spoke. When he moved away, Nadia looked toward me. You once believed I stole him, she said. I admitted that I once had. Nadia told me there was something I needed to understand. You became my reason for continuing too. My throat tightened. That was extremely inconvenient, I said. Most worthwhile people become inconvenient. I sat beside her. I reminded Nadia that she had saved me on the canal. She said I would have saved her. I told her I might have reviewed the schedule first. Nadia smiled, though her eyes had begun losing focus. She told me there was something I should say to Elias after we left. I pointed out that he was still standing nearby. Nadia said I should tell him that she eventually preferred me. Elias called the remark personally offensive. Nadia closed her eyes briefly. Both women developed standards, she said. We stayed until the storm warning reached its final hour. Nadia's thoughts began drifting. She asked twice whether the artificial morning cycle had started. No morning existed outside. Before leaving, she held my hand again. When I stop breathing, you should stop carrying guilt, Nadia said. I told her the instruction was unrealistic. She asked me to attempt obedience once. We closed the shelter door. The heater continued running behind it. We walked away while Nadia remained alive. That fact followed us longer than her voice. Elias and I returned to Martha. We secured the circulation assembly inside the cargo frame and began moving toward the frozen coast. Nadia's battery powered the cabin heater. Neither of us spoke during the first several hours. Her absence occupied more space than her body had. The coastline extended miles beyond its former position because the surface ocean had frozen outward. Ships remained trapped between pressure ridges. Some stood upright. Others leaned into walls of ice. The old service road had disappeared beneath snow. Our safest return route crossed a frozen bay. Near the shore, the ice measured more than 30 feet thick. The center remained thinner because geothermal vents warmed the deeper water. Liquid ocean survived below the frozen surface. That fact sounded hopeful until someone fell through. Elias drove while I monitored the scanner. I said Nadia would have criticized the route. Elias replied that she criticized every route, although she was usually correct. I touched the photograph inside my coat. Elias kept his eyes on the ice. I should have stayed with her, he said. She would have hated that. I should have carried her. She could not survive the return. I still should have carried her. I told him he sounded like me. Elias called that medically concerning. I said Nadia would have considered it emotional improvement. The ice groaned beneath Martha. The scanner detected a fracture ahead and I directed Elias east. The crawler crossed slowly. A cargo alarm activated. One of the securing cables had snapped, allowing the circulation assembly to shift toward the rear door. Elias stopped Martha. He explained that another movement could destroy the axle. I suggested using the interior rail, but it had already fractured. Elias pulled on his thermal hood. I will reconnect the anchor. We cannot stand outside here. We cannot abandon the pump. We already abandoned Nadia. His expression changed. You should never say that again. I reminded him that we had left her because the pump had to reach Hearth Nine. Elias said we had left because she was dying. She remained alive when we closed the door, I said. The assembly shifted again. Martha tilted. Elias opened the hatch. You can hate me after this repair. That schedule remains overcrowded. He climbed onto the ice and I connected his harness to the roof anchor. Wind pushed snow across the crawler as Elias moved toward the cargo frame. He pulled the broken cable beneath the assembly. A crack formed several feet away. I opened the side hatch and ordered him back inside. Elias said the cable needed 1 more minute. I reminded him that the ice did not negotiate. He answered that neither did the machinery. Elias secured the line. The ice beneath Martha's rear wheels dropped several inches. Black water forced itself through the fracture. I started the engine as Elias moved toward the door. The rear section collapsed. Martha tilted sharply and the circulation assembly slid toward the opening. I accelerated until the front wheels reached thicker ice. The cargo frame tore away from the crawler. The assembly remained attached to Martha by one anchor cable. Elias's safety line was connected to the same roof plate. The falling assembly pulled both the plate and Elias toward the water. I climbed outside. Elias held the outer rail with both hands while black ocean water rose around his legs. He ordered me to secure my own harness instead of reaching for him. I grabbed his wrist. The roof plate began tearing away from Martha. Elias looked toward the cable holding the pump. If I release the assembly, Hearth Nine dies. I no longer care about Hearth Nine. 6,000 people still care. I need you more. That argument arrived 18 months late. The ice broke beneath him. Water swallowed his lower body. I pulled until something shifted inside my injured shoulder. The anchor plate tore farther from the roof. Elias removed his cutting tool. He told me he had to cut his harness before the plate dragged me into the water with him. I begged him to remain attached. Elias said that option had already disappeared. He cut his safety line. The pump remained connected to Martha, but Elias's full weight dropped into the water. I held his wrist while the current pulled him sideways beneath the ice. He looked up at me. You should tell Nadia I remained unpleasant. She already knows everything. That answer sounds completely unfair. His glove slipped inside mine. I lost his wrist. Elias disappeared beneath the surface. His headlamp moved below the ice as the current carried him sideways. He struck the underside once. His light traveled farther into the darkness. Then the damaged anchor cable snapped. The circulation assembly fell into the same opening, dragging the broken cargo frame beneath the ice. The collapsing metal struck the frozen underside. Elias's light vanished at the same moment. His sacrifice saved me. It did not save the mission. I remained beside the opening until my gloves began freezing to the surface. Martha's alarms continued behind me. The pump was gone. Elias was gone. Nadia waited inside a shelter we could no longer reach. I returned to the crawler because my body continued following old instructions. Martha traveled 11 more miles before the damaged axle separated. The engine died several minutes later. I carried Nadia's battery, the photograph, 1 ration bar and a short-range radio. Hearth Nine stood more than 40 miles away. An old weather station stood 4 miles east. I began walking. The outside temperature had fallen below 80 degrees beneath freezing. Each breath hurt through my mask. My shoulder barely moved. The ocean remained to my right. Pressure cracks traveled across its surface. Sometimes they sounded like gunfire. Sometimes they sounded like voices beneath the ice. I understood the physical cause. Understanding never made the sound easier. My heated boots began failing during the second mile. The toes of my right foot became numb. Nadia's stitching still held along my coat. The weather station appeared beyond a frozen ridge. The small concrete building had partially collapsed. I broke through a lower window and entered. 3 bodies remained inside. A man sat against the wall. A woman rested beside him. A smaller body lay beneath a blanket. They had stayed together during the first winter. The accommodations look extremely poor, I said. At least nobody appears demanding. My voice sounded wrong inside the room. I covered the broken window with a metal panel and connected Nadia's battery to one small heater. Warm air entered slowly. Inside a cabinet, I found a short-range receiver and connected my radio pack. Static filled the room. Then a voice emerged. Hearth 9 emergency notice. Backup circulation efficiency has fallen below projected limits. I moved closer. All remaining residents in sections 7 through 9 must relocate toward the central tunnels. Heating access will end within 2 hours. Another voice interrupted. We cannot move additional people into the core. Someone farther from the microphone answered. Then leave the outer doors sealed. The transmission cut. I adjusted the controls. Hearth 9, this is Mara Vale. The recovery mission has failed. Static answered. Hearth 9, the assembly is lost. Elias Mercer is dead. Nadia Reyes remains at the northern maintenance shelter. Nothing returned. I transmitted again. The mission has completely failed. The radio could receive, but its transmitter had frozen. Hearth 9 continued speaking without hearing me. I listened as security teams directed residents through overcrowded tunnels. Children cried near an open microphone. The council ordered the garden levels to reduce agricultural lighting. That would slow food production. It would not save enough power. The settlement had fewer hours than anyone expected. I turned down the radio. A faded drawing remained taped above an old desk. A child had drawn a yellow sun above blue mountains. Birds crossed the upper corner. 3 people held hands beneath the light. Nobody born in Hearth 9 would have drawn shadows correctly. I sat beneath the picture and placed Nadia's photograph beside it. Elias looked ordinary beneath sunlight. That felt crueler than seeing him beneath the ice. Before the world ended, Elias repaired industrial machinery. Nadia studied agricultural biology. I transported freight. We ignored sunsets. We wasted food. We complained when rooms felt slightly cold. We believed warmth came from walls. The heater raised the temperature enough for exhaustion to replace pain. Inside another cabinet, I found an old audio recorder. The final file contained rain. Water struck a roof. Insects sounded in the distance. Thunder moved through the recording. Someone laughed near the microphone. I played it repeatedly. My breathing slowed. I thought about Nadia inside the maintenance shelter. Perhaps her heater still worked. Perhaps she had already lost consciousness. Perhaps she listened to our dead radio and understood that nobody was returning. I imagined opening the shelter door. She would look at me and ask where Elias remained. I would not need to answer. She would understand from my face. The radio continued broadcasting Hearth 9's collapse. Medical priority patients must report to Core Level 2. Residents without current work assignments must surrender and use thermal credits. All private heating devices are prohibited. A man shouted in the background. The transmission cut again. The battery indicator dropped lower. Cold returned through the floor. My fingers became white. I remembered the months I spent measuring Elias's attention. I counted how often he looked toward Nadia first. I noticed when he touched her shoulder. I pretended survival had erased jealousy while carrying it everywhere. The world had ended and I still tried dividing love into portions. Nadia understood sooner. Love did not belong to whoever arrived first. Love belonged to whoever carried the weight. Nadia carried Elias when I disappeared. She carried me above the canal. Elias carried Nadia toward Helios Station. He released himself beneath the ice because my harness could not hold both bodies. I carried their photograph. That was all I carried successfully. The heater weakened. A red fragment of the sun appeared through the cracked window. It moved behind the clouds without warming the snow. Scientists once believed that fragment might stabilize. It continued fading. The sun had not died bravely. Different sections pulled against one another until the force holding everything together failed. Human beings had helped create the wounds. They built machines designed to extract limitless energy. When the first rupture occurred, governments concealed the cause because the world had already become dependent on the power. They continued using the system. They called each new fracture natural. They watched the sun come apart slowly enough to understand what they had done. Then they built shelters and decided who deserved entrance. Hearth Nine had survived the darkness by repeating the same principle. Every crisis became another calculation. How many people could lose heat? How many bodies could become fertilizer? How much suffering preserved the machinery? Nadia became a weight calculation. Elias became a cable load. I became a damaged transmitter speaking toward people who could not hear me. The heater clicked once. The sound reminded me of our room. I almost expected Elias to defend the machine. I almost expected Nadia to insult him. The heater stopped. The rain recording continued for another minute. My feet no longer hurt. My fingers felt distant. The radio activated again. A voice from Hearth Nine sounded weaker. Core access has reached capacity. Another voice answered. Seal the garden-level doors. People shouted. Metal struck metal. Then the signal disappeared. I did not know whether the radio had failed or Hearth Nine had become silent. The difference no longer mattered. The solar fragment moved behind the clouds. Its red light faded gradually. No explosion followed. No final violence remained. The light simply became smaller until darkness replaced it. My body followed the same process. My heartbeat slowed. The cold stopped feeling hostile. It became heavy and quiet. For 18 months, every living person fought against the dark. We repaired heaters, rationed food, processed bodies, sealed tunnels, and dragged machines through frozen cities. Survival became another job nobody could resign from. I had reached the end of my shift. Nadia no longer required rescue. Elias no longer moved beneath the ice. Hearth Nine stood too far away. Nobody remained who needed my strength. The final red light disappeared behind the frozen clouds. I closed my eyes. The sun had stopped shining long before I died. I only stopped fighting afterward. For the first time since the world went dark, I did not need to stay warm. For the first time since losing them, I did not need to continue moving. Everything became quiet. The mission was finally over.